I knew something was wrong the moment the vice president called me paranoid. That word echoed in my head for days. Paranoid. Like I was losing my grip. Like I was the problem. But I wasn't. I was just doing my job. My name's Eli Tran, Senior Financial Analyst at Ravenholm Industries, a tech firm that prides itself on transparency and integrity. I'd been there 6 years, long enough to know when numbers don't add up. And they weren't. The first time I noticed the discrepancy, it was barely a blip. $27,000 redirected from an R&D sub-account to a vague consulting expense. But by the third week, that blip had become a pattern. Small transfers, hidden in timing gaps, all signed off by Vice President Marcus Hale, my boss, my mentor, and until recently, someone I admired. Marcus wasn't just a VP, he was the VP. Charismatic, sharp-dressed, the kind of guy who remembered everyone's birthday and could charm an investor out of their checkbook. He used to call me his numbers guy. Said I had the sharpest eyes in the division. But lately, those same eyes had become a problem. When I asked him about the discrepancies, he laughed. Eli, you're reading ghosts in spreadsheets. You've been pulling too many late nights. Take a day off before you start seeing conspiracies. Then he leaned in, smile fading just enough for me to notice. You're not paranoid, are you? The room felt smaller after that. For a while, I tried to believe him. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe the company's system was glitching again. But the more I dug, the worse it looked. Funds were being rerouted to shell accounts, names like Haven Consults, Marlin Advisory, and Blue Arrow Holdings. Each one led to a dead end. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. The last thing I wanted was to start a witch hunt based on a hunch. But every night, as I scrolled through financial trails and faded receipts, a chill crept into my gut. One night, I stayed late. Past midnight, the office was silent except for the hum of the servers. I was staring at an invoice when I heard the faint click of a door closing down the hall. Marcus's office. The lights flickered on. He wasn't supposed to be here. Through the frosted glass, I saw his shadow move, slow, deliberate. He was stuffing something into his briefcase. Then he paused, turned toward the hallway, and stared right at my cubicle. I froze. He couldn't see me, could he? The next morning, Marcus smiled like nothing happened. But when I logged into the system, every suspicious file I'd bookmarked was gone. That's when the unease stopped being subtle. It became a warning. The morning after the files disappeared, I tried to convince myself it was a glitch. Our servers crashed often enough that no one would have blinked. But the timing was too perfect, too clean. Every single document tied to the suspicious transfers was gone. No backups, no cache copies, not even a trace in the audit logs. It was as if someone had scrubbed the evidence with industrial bleach. I went to Marcus's office to ask about it, pretending it was just a tech issue. He was on a call when I walked in, voice low, calm, and too casual for that early in the morning. Yeah. Just make sure it's moved before end of quarter. I'll handle Eli. He froze when he saw me in the doorway. Then, just like that, his tone flipped to warmth. Eli. Morning. You look like you haven't slept. He hung up, flashed that PR perfect grin, and asked about the audit. When I mentioned the missing files, he shrugged. Probably IT maintenance. They've been doing cleanup on the servers this week. But when I checked with IT later, they swore there was no scheduled maintenance. That was red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 came a few days later, during a team meeting. Marcus suddenly announced that Danielle, a junior analyst who joined only 6 months ago, would be assisting me on financial compliance. Only she didn't assist, she replaced me. Danielle started handling reports I'd built from scratch. She got invited to calls I'd normally lead. And every time I tried to contribute, Marcus would cut me off with a polite but firm, Eli, let Danielle handle this one. It felt like being erased in slow motion. Around the office, people whispered that I'd been acting strange lately. That Marcus was worried about my workload. I hadn't told anyone what I'd found, but somehow the story had already shifted, painting me as unstable. At night, I'd stare at the ceiling, replaying every moment between us. The laughs during coffee breaks. The late nights balancing spreadsheets side by side. The way he used to say I had a future in leadership. Now I couldn't tell if any of it had ever been real. The paranoia, or what Marcus wanted me to think was paranoia, started bleeding into everything. Every email, every quiet conversation in the hall, every time he patted my shoulder and said, "Don't overthink it." But the final straw came on Friday. Marcus called me into his office, shut the door, and sighed like a disappointed father. "Eli," he said softly, "I think you need to take some time off. You've been seeing patterns that aren't there. I'm worried about you." He smiled that gentle, weaponized smile again. "Why don't you go home for a week? Clear your head." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I finally knew I wasn't. They called it administrative leave. I called it exile. Marcus framed it as a kindness, a week off to rest and reset. But the moment I stepped out of Ravenholm's glass doors, I knew what it really was: containment. Keep me quiet. Keep me away from the numbers. I should have let it go. I should have taken that week to sleep, breathe, move on. But obsession doesn't switch off like that. Especially when the thing gnawing at your gut feels real. So I did what Marcus never expected. I kept digging. The company laptop was locked, so I used my personal one. I had copies of old quarterly reports, archived PDFs, invoices from before the wipe. I started tracing the consulting firms again, this time through old metadata. That's when I noticed something, tiny, but impossible to ignore. One of the shell companies, Blue Arrow Holdings, listed its registered agent as Hale M. Marcus's signature. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Maybe a different Hale. But when I ran the EIN through a corporate registry database, my stomach dropped. The business address matched a property Ravenholm owned, an old testing site we hadn't used in years. He wasn't diverting money to random accounts. He was diverting it to himself. Millions. Every consulting expense had been routed to one of Marcus's personal fronts, disguised as third-party contractors. He'd been bleeding the company dry, one quiet wire transfer at a time, and I was the idiot who'd flagged his trail months ago. And he'd made sure to make me look crazy for it. I sat there in my apartment, staring at the proof on my screen. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. Every laugh, every pep talk, every time he called me his sharp-eyed analyst, it all felt like a performance. I wanted to storm back into the office, shove the evidence in his face, watch his smile crack. But reason stopped me. If Marcus had already erased the files and turned the team against me, then he'd bury this too. I needed leverage. Something official. That's when I remembered Ravenholm's internal audit team, independent contractors, not under Marcus's control. If I could get the evidence to them discreetly, it would trigger an automatic investigation. So I printed everything: emails, transfers, registrations, even screenshots. I put them in a plain envelope and dropped it into the audit department's after-hours box downtown. No name, no return address. Just one note inside. For internal review, possible embezzlement by VP Marcus Hale. My hands were shaking when I let it go. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like relief. But it didn't last. Because 2 days later, I got a call from Marcus himself. "Eli," he said, voice calm but cold. "We need to talk about something serious. I know what you did." The moment I heard his voice, every instinct told me not to answer. But I did. "Eli," Marcus said smoothly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'd like to clear things up, in person." There was no warmth this time. Just the faint edge of authority, like a man used to control, now desperate to keep it. We met the next morning in his corner office. The city skyline glowed behind him, but all I could focus on was the stack of folders neatly placed on his desk. My folders. My research. My handwriting. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "You've been busy," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. He had everything: the copies, the notes, even the metadata printouts. How? The audit team must have tipped him off. Or someone intercepted the file. I thought we trusted each other, Marcus went on. But instead, you send anonymous accusations to internal review? Do you have any idea what that could do to my reputation? He smiled. Just barely. You could lose your job for this. Or worse. The words hit me like a slap. For weeks, I'd been second-guessing myself, questioning my sanity because of him. And now, seeing him so calm, so sure of his control, it made something in me snap. For the first time, I didn't feel scared. I felt furious. You stole from this company, I said, my voice shaking. You made me doubt myself so I wouldn't find out. He stood up, moving around the desk slowly, like a predator circling prey. Careful, Eli. Paranoia is a dangerous thing. It can ruin careers. There it was again, that word. Paranoid. The one he'd used to gaslight me, to bury me in self-doubt. Only now, hearing it again, something inside me shifted. I realized he was scared too. That smile was armor. The threats were desperation. And that meant I had power. I didn't show him the flash drive hidden in my pocket, the one with a second set of files I'd kept off the record, encrypted and backed up in the cloud. He thought he'd destroyed everything, but I'd learned from the best. You're right, I said finally. I was paranoid. But paranoia's just another word for paying attention. He didn't like that. His jaw tightened. Leave this alone, Eli. Walk away. But I was already gone, at least in spirit. I walked out of that office with shaking hands and a steady heart. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of Marcus Hale. I was done running. He wanted me quiet. I was going to make him heard. And this time, I wouldn't just expose him. I'd make sure everyone saw what kind of man called me paranoid. I didn't have a manifesto. I had a checklist. Quiet, precise, and brutal in its simplicity. Marcus was good at theater. I'd be the stagehand who pulled the curtains. I started by consolidating everything onto the encrypted drive in my pocket. Wire logs, invoices, emails, the corporate registry showing Hale, M, as the agent for Blue Arrow. Then I uploaded a second encrypted copy to an offshore cloud with a timed access key that only I could release. No single point of failure. No more vanishing files. Using old backups and my memory of the system's quirks, I rebuilt the transfers chronologically. Small amounts stretched into a pattern, quarterly consulting spikes timed right before executive bonuses. I mapped the money to the shell companies, then to bank accounts that, when cross-checked, traced back to properties Marcus controlled. It was a spiderweb, and I had the map that I knew the audit team would be the cleanest route, but I couldn't risk them being tipped. So I quietly approached a former contractor, a forensic accountant named Priya, who'd left Ravenholm on good terms. Over coffee, I fed her the cleanest parts of the trail and watched her face go pale. She agreed to act as an independent reviewer, not as my pawn but as a professional who'd sign her name to what she verified. Marcus thrived on control. He'd already shown he could make files disappear and narratives flip. So I built a decoy, a fake consulting invoice that looked juicy enough to tempt him into cleaning it up, but traceable down to a specific shell account I controlled for the moment. I sent it through the channels we used for legitimate contracts and watched the access logs. If he touched it, the chain would light up. I fed a sanitized dossier to Priya and slipped an anonymous tip to internal audit pointing to specific transaction IDs, the ones tied to the decoy. I didn't sign the tip. I let it sit like a splinter under the board's skin. Irritating, undeniable when poked. All week Marcus kept smiling. He promoted Danielle to lead the compliance meetings, as if polishing the stage lights would hide the rot. He called town hall speeches, hugged donors, and thanked the board for steady hands. He was a maestro pretending the orchestra was playing on cue. But beneath his calm, I could sense the twitch of someone waking to a nightmare. He began lingering near the audit office, taking more calls in hushed tones, asking IT about phantom backups. The predator's confidence was fraying at the edges. The decoy invoice hadn't been touched yet. That was both good and bad. It meant Marcus hadn't panicked. Yet. He still felt in control. He still believed he could snuff the smoke before anyone saw the fire. On Thursday evening, As rain hammered the city and the office emptied, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "They're coming. Be ready." My heart lurched. Something had moved. The curtain was about to be pulled. The morning it all came crashing down started deceptively normal. Marcus Hale stood at the podium in the Ravenholm atrium, basking in the glow of the quarterly announcement. Cameras flashed, investors applauded, and the company's PR team circled like well-trained satellites. The man had perfected the image, the visionary VP, the savior of the quarter. And I was standing in the back of the crowd, invisible, watching, waiting. He didn't know that, 48 hours earlier, the internal auditors had received a third-party verification packet signed by Priya Mehta, CPA, with every fraudulent account traced to him. He didn't know that the board's compliance chair had quietly looped in federal investigators. Or that the decoy invoice had done its job perfectly, capturing his digital fingerprint when he accessed it at 1:17 a.m. When the live stream started, my stomach knotted. I had sent the timing key link 30 minutes before the broadcast, programmed to unlock a secure site holding every piece of proof, from wire transfers to shell company registrations. A single click from the auditors would release the data to their secure internal portal. And then it happened. In the middle of Marcus's polished speech about financial resilience, the monitors behind him flickered. The Ravenholm logo vanished. For half a second, there was only static. Then, line by line, the numbers appeared. Wire transfers, account names, dates, sums. And at the bottom of every transaction, the name, Hale, M. The crowd's applause withered into silence. Marcus froze, staring at the screen like it had betrayed him. His voice faltered. Can we fix the feed?" But the IT team wasn't moving. Security was. The auditors were. Cameras kept rolling. Behind me, someone whispered, "Oh my God." Within seconds, chaos erupted, executives whispering furiously, phones lighting up, reporters streaming the spectacle live. Marcus tried to regain control, but the damage was irreversible. I could almost hear the investigators' footsteps as they entered the lobby, badges flashing under the camera lights. One of them approached the podium. "Marcus Hale, we need you to come with us." His face drained of color. For a man who'd built his empire on poise, he suddenly looked very small. As they led him away, our eyes met. Just once. Recognition flickered, not hatred, not shock, but something quieter. Fear. He mouthed a single word. "You." I didn't nod. I didn't need to. The crowd erupted as news alerts buzzed across every phone. Ravenholm VP under investigation for embezzlement. Secret accounts exposed live. In that moment, I should have felt triumphant. But what I felt was cleaner, clarity. He'd called me paranoid. Told me I was imagining ghosts in spreadsheets. Now those ghosts had come alive on 40-foot screens. And every secret he buried was finally screaming in daylight. It's been 3 months since the day Marcus Hale's empire fell apart. The headlines came fast. Ravenholm VP arrested for embezzlement. Whistleblower exposes secret accounts. Company launches full internal reform. The footage of his public arrest went viral within hours. You've probably seen it, the once unshakable vice president being escorted through the Ravenholm lobby, face pale under fluorescent lights, his perfect tie hanging loose. He didn't say a word, but his eyes searched the crowd like he was still looking for an exit that didn't exist. There wasn't one. The audit confirmed everything, the shell firms, the money laundering, the forged approvals. Millions gone, siphoned from company funds into his hidden accounts. Every transfer meticulously documented, by the paranoid analyst he tried to silence. When the board called me back in, they used words like hero, integrity, and bravery. They reinstated me, doubled my pay, even offered me a promotion to lead compliance. I accepted, not out of pride, but because I wanted to make sure no one like Marcus could ever do this again. Still, some nights, I catch myself replaying that first conversation, the one where he smiled and told me I was imagining things. How easily I believed him. How close I came to giving up. That's the real danger of betrayal. It doesn't just take your trust in others. It tries to steal your trust in yourself. But I learned something through all of this. Being called paranoid isn't an insult when you're right. It's proof that someone's afraid of what you might find. Marcus lost everything. His title, his career, his reputation. I heard he's facing years in prison, his accounts frozen, his so-called consulting firms dismantled one by one. And me. I sleep fine now. Because I didn't just expose him. I survived him. The poetic justice. The man who told me to stop seeing patterns that aren't there got caught in the one pattern he couldn't erase, the trail of his own greed. Sometimes, the truth doesn't whisper. It detonates. Bomb. If you've ever been made to feel crazy for trusting your instincts, this story's for you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by someone who made you doubt yourself? What did you do when you finally saw the truth? And if you want more stories where justice hits back harder than betrayal, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because next time, the one they call paranoid might just be the one who's right.